Nobody wins when the family feels.
Don't be alarmed, don't be alarmed, don't be alarmed.
Oh, you scare me.
That's what I said, don't be alarmed. I'm looking for my cousin that's missing. She a 13-year-old girl. And somebody told me that she might be in this area. So I'm not trying to scare y'all, I'm just looking for my cousin. Neziah Harris. Thank you very much.
10-year-old Neziah Harris stepped off her school bus and disappeared.
Now her family is still waiting for answers. And Harris was last seen in early January after she got off the school bus. She has not been heard from or seen since.
They didn't report her missing to the day after she went missing. Just the fact that this well-known pedophile was around any of them was a problem for me.
Last time you been up to your daughter's school, I said my daughter's school. I said I don't even know what school she go to. I said I've been looking for her. And they looked at each other, and I was like, what's going on? They said, your daughter's missing.
You tell somebody rest in peace when you never found their body. For me, that's tough. You never want to be the one that try to close that chapter on someone's family member, they loved one, before at least obtaining the body. Some type of evidence. I'm sure it's one person that still have some form of hope. That person's still out there. But when authorities come out and say, hey, they believe this person no longer living, it's like my hands folded. They tired, rather. I wish it was something else, but that's where we at. Parents have to start being held accountable for their kids' actions. But what if your parents not in your life and you was put on someone who probably didn't even want you? More than likely, that's the case we have here today. When I first heard about this story, I was overwhelmed. You're talking about a 13-year-old girl who was allegedly pregnant, last seen getting off a school bus. And by the way, the dude who got her pregnant got kids by her aunt. Now, before we even go over this story, a lot of times we overlook people like this. Let me break it down. When you in jail, you got something like pen link. I'm not sure if it's different depending on where you house when you're incarcerated. But it's for other people in the free world who looking for a relationship but not necessarily can't get one. And when they do find one, that inmate seem to can't do no wrong in their eyes. And I'm sure something like that has something to do with this scenario. When you talk about the man who the alleged perpetrator in this story, we got to bring up a man who a known ex offender on a registry list, and yet he was still allowed to be around this young girl for years. And then the family TV come in. They get aware of this situation, and they start to do their homework by looking at all public facts that's not necessarily and we find out who this young girl parents are. Needless to say, we talking about a young girl who lost her mom since 2021. We'll later discuss. We talking about a young girl who dad necessarily wasn't even in her life. In an interview you'll later hear from him, he mentioned for about 8 years, he didn't know where his daughter was. Meaning since the age of 5, he was pretty much obsolete from her life. But then we say, hey, we here today saying we have an arrest 9 months later. But this the same prime suspect that authorities had in mind from month number 1, but wouldn't release his name. An ex-offender, an adult who got the nerve to do such thing to a child. And he supposed to have some rights? But all in all, that's what we have here today. In this video, I'm going to do my best to shine light on this young girl case, giving her love, respect, and condolences to her family. But we also going to briefly talk about her parents, her environment, this sucker who allegedly did all these things. But before we go over this one, I want you guys to remember, I don't give you no angle. I just give you the story. So with that being said, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We'll jump right to it. Today we're going to Detroit, Michigan, January 9th, 2024. A would have been 14-year-old girl now, but happened when she was 13 years old, was last seen getting off the school bus on her way home. She was a student at J.E. Clark Prep Academy on Detroit East Side. She was last seen getting off the bus on Cornwall Street and 3 Mile Drive, near Warren Avenue and Walter Drive. Now before we really talk about the alleged motive on why she was allegedly kidnapped and abducted by a person who was sleeping and had kids with her aunt, we got to talk about her upcoming. This young girl has siblings. Her dad, as we mentioned in the interview you'll later hear in, talks about how authorities trying to locate her, helped them find her in over 8 years. But a young woman who go by the name named Katina Renee Baker, a young woman born October 7, 1991, and lost her life just before she turned 30 at 29 on August 4th, 2021. Keep the time frame on the day she lost her life in mind when you hear about after authorities' investigation. They believe she was groomed by this alleged perpetrator since 2022. Now, I'm not sure how Katina lost her life, may she rest in peace, but it seems when she was just 19 years old, 10 years prior, she got arrested in Salt Lake City alongside 4 others from Michigan. Apparently, she was busted in this prostitution ring. Authorities were seeking through escort ads and other forms or ways of soliciting, but at this point, we say Naziah had it rough out the gate, but then she was allegedly given to her aunt, a person who probably didn't want her. Now, this allegedly her aunt right here. Her name haven't been disclosed, but this man that she's hugging, his name has Yrs Ago, 41 years old, a man that's on this offenders list. We talking about a sick man, and I'm gonna disclose the details, but I want to throw an FYI for you guys. A month after Naziah had went missing, he got arrested on unrelated charges. And that's a huge part on why authorities believe her body won't be discovered if it haven't by now. See this picture on this tablet, fam? This is the last picture. Her waving hello, where it seemed like she really saying goodbye, that she made the public. It was the same video and picture she took the day she lost her life. It was a tablet at her school, but also on that tablet was messages. To who? Yrs Ago. In those messages, it indicated that they had plans to meet up after her getting out of school. And according to the affidavit, Yrs Ago, who as we mentioned had children with Naziah's aunt, is accused of sending sexual, explicit text messages to Naziah beginning in September of 2022. And she has sent sexually explicit photos of herself in return. Naziah allegedly texts Yrs in September of 2023, saying she had not had her period. And in November of 2023, the evidence shows that Yrs knows that she is pregnant. His phone record shows that he searched online about abortions, abortion pills, and drinking red antifreeze. This is a picture of Yrs at his shop where he worked. It was a mechanic shop. This shop happens to be the last place where a witness say they seen Naziah, alongside another grown man getting escorted with Yrs to that shop. And that was according to Yrs' sister who seen her at the shop. Once again, she mentions that Naziah leave a 13-year-old girl with those 2 grown men to go God knows where and then return. And according to the affidavit, Yrs had checked in a motel at 9:30 p.m. and Naziah was nowhere to be seen or found and was never heard from again. Weeks would go by. Family would go door to door looking for her. And on top of that, her dad came public about he believed she's pregnant. And on top of that, he not seeing her for 8 years. He's speaking all this while he in the hospital waiting for a heart. Unfortunately, he didn't get one in time and lost his life soon after. May he rest in peace. 11 condolences to his family.
Don't be alarmed, don't be alarmed, don't be alarmed.
Oh, you scared me.
That's what I said, don't be alarmed. I'm looking for my cousin that's missing. She a 13-year-old girl. And somebody told me that she might be in this area. So I'm not trying to scare y'all, I'm just looking for my cousin. Naziah Harris. Thank you very much.
13-year-old Naziah Harris stepped off her school bus and disappeared.
Now her family is still waiting for answers and renewing their pleas for someone to come forward with information.
Naziah was last seen back on January 9th at the intersection of Cornwall and 3 Mile Drive.
Now, the primary suspect in her disappearance is a registered sex offender currently being held in the Wayne County Jail.
Well, 7 News Detroit reporter Ryan Marshall is live at the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice in downtown Detroit, where the family will gather for a vigil later this morning. Ryan.
Well, guys, the family of that missing Detroit teen still seeking justice in this case. That includes Naziah's biological father, who exclusively spoke with 7 News Detroit. He is fighting for his own life, but is holding on to find his little girl.
I know the family hopes and prays that she is still alive.
Correct.
But if you get that phone call,
that's why I'm getting back in the ministry.
48-year-old Mervyn Jennings is Naziah Harris's biological father. He says he's tried to reconnect with his daughter for the past 8 years. Jennings says he was only reconnected after 2 Detroit Public Schools police officers tracked him down.
When the last time you been up to your daughter's school? I said my daughter's school. I said I don't even know what school she go to. I said I've been looking for her. And they looked at each other and I was like, what's going on? They said, your daughter's missing.
He's dealt with serious medical issues in the 8 years away from Neziah. Jennings has congestive heart failure. He says in April, doctors gave him only 7 days to live. While that prognosis has slightly improved, Mervyn needs a new heart. While dealing with those difficult health challenges, Mervyn says what really hurts his heart.
I believe my daughter was pregnant. Yes.
He says much of the family thinks Neziah was being sexually assaulted by a man who is a convicted sex offender. We're not naming him because he hasn't been officially charged in the case.
Oh my God. They're like, oh my God. Oh my God. You know, what's done in the dark, it's gonna come. You can't do this. You can't do this, man.
And get this, Mervyn also says that he talked to Neziah's older brother, who says that registered sex offender has been molesting her since she was 12 years old. They are holding out hope that Neziah will come home alive.
A day later, January 10th, 2024, Neziah was nowhere to be found, but some clothes items was found in Detroit, and the area where Jarvis was found as well. Yet, authorities didn't make no name public to stay away from or to be aware for, nor did they make an arrest. 9 months later, on the last week of September, Wayne County Prosecutor's Office make an arrest. 41-year-old Jarvis Raymond Butts, charged with first-degree second-degree criminal conduct, and child abusive material. Butts is also facing sexual assault charges involving 2 additional victims who were under the age of 13 at the time, one being as young as 4 years old.
My career looking at pictures of murdered people. When I was trying homicide cases for 6 straight years as an assistant prosecutor, I would spend hours thinking about the victim whose case I was getting ready to try, wondering how they spent their last weeks, their last days, their last hours, and their last minutes of their lives. What were they thinking about? Did they know that the end was near? And if it was someone they knew, what must they have been thinking as they were shot, stabbed, or whatever mechanism of death was used and confronted them with by the person they knew or loved? I can't imagine the thought that goes through their minds. But it's always 1,000 times worse when the person is a child or a baby, someone in the dawn of their lives who haven't begun to live their lives. The picture behind me is of Zenaia, and that will always be haunting because it was taken just a short time before the evidence shows that she was never seen or heard from again. It was taken by Neziah herself, a selfie. That's the last known picture that we know about of her. And it was pointed out to me by one of the detectives on this case and by one of the prosecutors. She is smiling, waving, saying hello. But little did she know that she was really saying goodbye. We will provide to you later a very skeleton timeline of the time right before her death, before and after. Of course, the detail would be provided in court. The evidence shows overwhelmingly in this case that she is in fact deceased. The last time she was seen alive was January the 9th of this year, 2024, almost 9 months ago. Her missing status was reported to the Detroit Public School Police Department by her grandmother on that very day when she never returned home from school. And again, that was January the 9th of 2024. In early February of 2024, the case was turned over to the Detroit Police Department. Frankly, that should have happened right away. But they began investigating immediately. The evidence would further show that through text messages that we know and that we have, Zenaia and this defendant were going to meet after school on January the 9th. We know that she did indeed meet up with the defendant that we're charging in this case. We also know that several people close to Mr. Butts, who we were charging later, saw them together in several different locations, people that he knew well. We have evidence that at 9:30 p.m. on that day, that Mr. Butts checked into a motel and that Zenaia was never seen or heard from again. Not from her family, not from her schoolmates, not from her friends, not from social media where she was extremely active with her friends, not from teachers, no one. We know that she had no medical conditions that would cause a life-threatening medical emergency to her. And he, again, was the last person that saw her alive. She would have turned 14 years old just 10 days ago on September the 16th of 2024. And again, no one has seen or heard from her. You look at that face, and you do not see the horrors that she had gone through in her short life. The exploitation, the molestations, the sexual abuse, and the pregnancy that she was concealing. The evidence will show that from one of her text messages to and with Jarvis Butts. And we also know, the evidence will show, that there's no evidence of anyone else being the father of that child, other than the defendant himself, who we charge today. And he knew she was pregnant. We know that he was also searching for ways to abort the baby. We know that sexually explicit photos were requested by him of her, and that she complied and sent them to her. All at the hands, we allege, the man we are charging with her death and also her long-term sexual abuse. In our warrant review process that Matt and Tina and others put together, excellent work on that. Video of 111 gigabytes, witnesses and witness statements, body-worn camera, and let me not forget, it was Tina and Matt's memo, but the work of the Detroit Police Department. Anyway, we reviewed 111 gigabytes of video, witnesses and witness statements, body-worn camera footage, surveillance video, police reports, documents, 19 gigabytes, medical records, search warrant returns, phone extractions, which came to 506 gigabytes. Today we are charging Jarvis Butts with 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder, 1 count of criminal sexual conduct in the second degree, and 1 count of child sexually abusive material. Today we are also charging Mr. Butts with more counts of criminal sexual conduct on 2 more girls, yes, girls, on 2 other separate cases. The girls in question now are 20 and 11 respectively today, but both were under the age of 13 years old at the time the offenses occurred that we're charging. We are charging that one victim who is now 20 years old, that from April of 2012 to April of 2014, is alleged that defendant Bucks sexually assaulted the victim at a residence in Detroit. Further facts and evidence on that matter will be placed on the record at the preliminary examination. In that case, we charge Mr. Butts with criminal sexual conduct, 1 count in the first degree, person under 13, defendant 17 or older. In that case, we are also charging Mr. Butts with 3 counts of criminal sexual conduct in the second degree, person under 13, defendant 17 years or older. In the second criminal sexual conduct case, well, I guess the third, that we're charging today, we are alleging that the victim, who is now 13 years old, that from July 2015 through July 2017, we're alleging that he sexually assaulted residents in Detroit, and again, further facts and evidence will be developed at the preliminary examination. Defendant Butts have been charged with, in that case, 1 count of criminal sexual conduct in the second degree. Child under the age of 13, Mr. Butts over the age of 17. Based on all the evidence that I've laid out now, and much more that will be shown later in court, based on all these cases, we will present in court Mr. Butts targeted and befriended women who had to have sexual relationships with their young daughters. He would have relationships with their mothers, but his true desire was to have sex with their young daughters. That's what the evidence will show. He was a classic and expert groomer and pedophile. It's incredibly sad, incredibly unspeakable, and we want to bring justice to her and her family. I have to take this moment to say something to you, and this is not directed at all at Naziah's family, who by all accounts had many in her family that truly loved her. This is directed to everyone else listening to me now. We must be very careful who we let into our hearts and our homes and our lives, especially if you have children. We must be very careful who we have around our children and elders respectively. We must also be very careful who we leave our children with, even if they are in a relationship partners, family, and friend. I'll say that again. Even if they are relationship partners, families, or friends.
It's a very unfortunate and sick situation. Hard to say rest in peace, and I keep saying it's crazy. So as I mentioned, someone whose body hasn't even been discovered. Fam, this was the story of a man who took the life, allegedly, of his baby mother, his girlfriend, whatever you want to call it, niece, at just 13 years old, after allegedly getting her pregnant. Let me know how you guys feel about this one in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And today, I'll catch you guys on the next one.